Hello, just a quick look at the pyramid of Meidum, and well, with all these things, there's no solid record. There are many conflicting accounts going back to the ancient writers, and it's only there's a lot of opinion, so I don't want to get into those factors. But look at the collapse. So there's different ideas on the evolution of pyramid design. Which one come first? Who did? I'm not touching that with a barge pole. That seems much more now a matter of what you are almost political, rather than well, people pick their sides. Up to them. Great, but just have a look at some of the elements of it. So different stories, okay. But what was this? So you have your muster bar now. Then we see like they're basically one level. Then they go to two. Then they go to three. And so was this a series of mastabas built on top, and then they come along later and turned it or attempted to turn it into a pyramid? I don't know. I think it's there is evidence, but anyway, that's not my bag. Now, the similarities between the step pyramid at Saqqara. Now, the cross section, but what they found again that this was added to. So in itself, this was not a single construction; it was added to. But also the important feature will be, well, why did this collapse? Well, at Saqqara you get a bit of an idea there because we see the like casing stones on the outside. What's happened is that they haven't been stacked horizontally; they've been stacked at an angle. That's not a good idea for long term. Now, Meidum is also at a 7:11 ratio, same proportions as the Great Pyramid, so make that what you will. But now we do see that they're horizontally stacked on the interior, but what you find here is here you can see these casing stones. Now again, were they part of the original construction? I don't know, but what's happened here is, well, they're clearly at an angle, and that's just not a good way of doing things. So these casing stones stacked at an angle, you get as an example of the idea there. So yeah, if you've worked, if you stack things at an angle like this, it's just not, it's a really, really bad idea, essentially. Now, even if they were locked into horizontal stones a little bit further in, well, that's still going to be a problem, especially if they're locked in. If they were just sitting on the outside, that's bound to fail stacking things up at an angle. It's just not a good idea. But especially if they're interlocked with with stones that are, for instance, you can get an idea. Now, whether this horizontal was originally horizontal stacking carried all the way to the top, well, we don't know. But even if this outside, well, basically what would happen, okay, so again, just a comparison again, we see at step pyramid, well, that's what's happening. If you stack these things up like that, it's just not a good idea. But especially now, if we were to carry that angle up, now even if the stones were stacked horizontal all the way to the top, just with the casing stones at an angle like this, interlocked, especially at these narrow points, what's going to happen is that these stacking at an angle, it's going to collapse. It's not it's very unstable. It's not a good idea. You don't, that's why you stack things on top of each other. If you stack things on a hillside, even if, well, they're just going to slide off. That's just it's just, the laws of nature. And especially at these narrow points at the top. So even if for horizontal levels carried up, especially at these narrow points, eventually these angled stones are going to collapse and they're going to pull what they're attached to as well and bring it down. Now, if they ever completed this, I don't know. If they got to the top levels there, but now maybe, as is so often the case, so English castles or French castles, what happens is, where are they? Well, you see a lot of ruins. What happened to the stone? There's not stones laying around these old castles because the people come along, pick them up, and you find them in those stone walls. So the stone walls in the English-French countryside, a lot of them are just built from pre-cut stone. Oh, beautiful. There you go. I'm going to use this for a construction material. Just recently in South America, I'm not exactly sure, a road construction team tore apart an ancient pyramid to use it as road material. Mohenjo-daro, they were building a train line, and they pulled apart and used the bricks from these ancient sites. So this is a modern, going back through time, people, well, I need to make a home, I need to make walls. Well, the stone's there for me, I'm going to use it. So that's what happens with these things. So it could be that this was completed and the stones were taken away, just like the casing stones at the pyramid. Could be maybe they never finished it. They got to a certain point, the outside collapsed. Okay, we're going to leave it. I don't know, but yeah, I just haven't seen. And I come across this reading up a paper, and then I try to find good pictures. There are very few good pictures that I could find anyway of these angled stones, and this is at least a partial explanation of why this pyramid has collapsed. Because, well, you don't stack things up at an angle. Okay, so yep, with that, just a pointer. I don't, nothing too much error I can add to it. But again, just one of these things that having looked and watched, and I have really never really saw it mentioned apart from once a while back, and then it just recently, well, earlier today, I was reading up on something else, and I come across them mentioning this, trying to find the photos of it. Not too much, lots of videos about other stuff, but not too much mentions of this. Now, anyway, hope you found that interesting, at least a line of questioning. If you're interested in these things, have a good one.